And that, my friends, is how you put on a professional wrestling show. Hey, everyone, I'm Omar Q, and welcome back to Real Take Wrestling. Oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about. AEW Revolution 2023 is in the books. And along with that, probably this might be my favorite AEW pay-per-view. I mean, look, AEW All Out 2021, I think, still is the best wrestling pay-per-view since WrestleMania X7. But boy, did this give AEW pay-per-views a run for their money. In my opinion, this pay-per-view had almost everything you could desire from a big pay-per-view. Everything barring just a big return or debut. Outside of that, it delivered and then some. You had, in my opinion, 2 5-star caliber matches, as in 2 just nearly perfect matches. Other matches that were great, excellent in their own right, and not a bad match to be seen on the entire card. And even the worst match on this card, I'm looking at you, Samoa Joe and Wardlow, was like decent and still good and still productive at what they wanted to do. Corey Williams in the chat says, really good wrestling show. I fully agree. Guys, by the way, if you're just joining us, welcome, first of all. Hope you guys enjoyed the pay-per-view. If you got to watch it. If you didn't, I'm going to run through the entire card, talk about my thoughts about each match, and just have a whole bunch of fun, as we always do on these streams. So if you guys want to stick around for future videos, streams, and things like that, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Also, if you want to guarantee your question or statement gets read out on the air, be sure to leave a super chat. That's a great way to support the channel, help us grow, and yeah, that's my plug for super chats. Guaranteed to get your question or statement read out on the air. Ramit in the chat says, after losing against the House of Black, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks getting emotional, indicating they're leaving their company. I don't think that that's necessarily an indication of them leaving, as maybe just going in a different direction. Because remember, Kenny Omega outside of trios wrestling is still one of the best wrestlers of all time, best singles wrestlers, I should say, of all time. So there's stuff you need to be able to do with him. There's other stuff you can do with the Young Bucks. FTR and the Young Bucks needs to happen again. And guess who is looking like they're next in line for the tag team titles? It's FTR. So we'll talk about them as well later on in the show. First, let's get through a little bit of this card. Again, leave a super chat if you want to guarantee your question or statement gets read out on the air as we go through this. 0 hour AEW Revolution. You had the Varsity Athletes and Ari Daivari taking on Lucha Brothers and Mark Briscoe. I'm going to be real quick about this one. Mark Briscoe, they're obviously establishing as a star, and rightfully so. He's kicking ass on all levels in AEW. He's been kicking ass, obviously, his entire career, but, you know, ever since the tragic passing of his brother, I love the way that he's been performing, and I love the way that he's been platformed on AEW. And I just hope to see more of it, and I can't wait to see what happens as they continue. And you know, eventually they're going to have to figure out what happens to those ROH tag titles. And Mark Briscoe, when he does win that big one, because I think he will. I think he will win the Ring of Honor World Championship at one point, or maybe even an AEW Singles Championship at one point. And it's going to be a big moment, obviously. So kudos to them. You had Lucha Bros and Mark Briscoe reach for the sky, boys. Pick up the victory here. Love to see it. Moving on, we have our opening contest. Chris Jericho versus Absolute Ricky Starks. Fantastic opening match. Ricky Starks picked up the victory here, as many people predicted. I honestly thought that they were going to pull a fast one, have Chris Jericho pick up the victory here, and then, you know, just maybe have some shenanigans, eventually go into a feud with Ricky Starks and maybe Sammy Guevara, and that was going to be how Guevara or Ricky Starks got his big win off. But instead, they decided to go the route of Ricky Starks beating Chris Jericho clean. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I just wasn't sure they were going to have Chris Jericho lose that many times in a row. But then again, Jericho's near 50 years old, 52 years old. I keep calling him Sammy Guevara. All the young guys in AEW. Ricky Starks, as Taz likes to say. He's a young buck, and that dude is, I'm telling y'all, I said this before, I'll say it again. My pick to take the AEW title off of MJF before the bidding war of 2024 will be absolute Ricky Starks. I think it should be him. This dude is on a lightning to the moon trajectory right now, and I love to see it because this is a guy who I think everyone wants to succeed. I think a lot of people really hope that he would develop into this caliber of a guy, and I think he's exceeding some expectations as well. So big night for Ricky Starks. Jericho's probably going to go into a feud with I don't know, who won tonight? Yeah, Jungle Boy, and he's gonna do some things with Jungle Boy Jack Perry, and he's like, that would be a very Chris Jericho thing to do. He's like, you idiot, you beat my fellow Canadian brother. Blah blah blah. So we'll see. Speaking of his fellow Canadian brother, Christian Cage versus Jungle Boy Jack Perry in the final burial. Okay. So there was a little controversy before this match because number one, you had the whole thing of they played that vignette of Jungle Boy Jack Perry digging Christian's grave, or what we thought was Christian Cage's grave, and they ended up announcing the match as a hardcore Falls Count Anywhere, blah, whatever, no holds barred match. And then people were expecting this to be a buried live match, and then suddenly on the pre-show, they started referring to this as the final burial, and then Tony Schiavone came out and explained that it's basically like a buried alive match, which I thought was dope. And I thought it was a fitting end to this feud. Again, this has been one of AEW's longest feuds. This has been going on since summer of 2021, literally since they had that Casino Battle Royale match that Jack Perry eliminated Christian Cage last in. This feud has been going on ever since then, or this alliance even between Christian Cage and Jack Perry ever since then. It's been going on, and it's been one of the longest running storylines in wrestling. Now, part of that obviously is because Christian Cage got injured, but other than that, I think these guys really told a good story because at the end of the day, you wanted to see this come to an end. And you wanted to see it come to an end with Christian Cage not just getting his ass beat, but Christian Cage getting buried. And that's exactly what we got. Jungle Boy Jack Perry, the man who promised that he was going to win an AEW Singles Championship in the year 2023, looks like he's going to deliver on that promise. What I saw from him tonight in this match, again, great match. Excellent match. I think these two worked very well together. Christian Cage wore this turtleneck, sleeveless turtleneck, which heel heat, just oodles of heel heat there. And I liked it. I think it was exactly what this match needed to be. And Christian Cage ended up getting thrown in the casket, the lid closed, and then they did this cool thing where the second the lid closed, the casket just fell straight down into the hole. Jungle Boy Jack Perry, of course, very emotional, gave Christian Cage a kiss on the forehead. Maybe that is a sign of things to come because there has been talk that Christian Cage might be done with AEW very soon, and he might be heading back to WWE to do a spot with Edge on what might be Edge's final run for his career. So keep your eyes glued to that whole situation because if Christian Cage does leave AEW, I think this is a guy who accomplished a lot in a very short amount of time. He debuted at Revolution 2021. So it's 2 years. And in those 2 years, he beat Kenny Omega for the Impact World Championship. He main evented the best pay-per-view AEW has ever had, arguably the best pay-per-view since WrestleMania X7. Again, I'm a hardliner on that. And he's just had great match after great match after great match. His motto when he came to AEW was what? It was outwork everyone, and I think he accomplished that. If that's what the mission statement was for Christian Cage and AEW, he accomplished that and then some. And if this is the end, it's been a hell of a run. Just hell of a run. Did exactly what he needed to do. Did it the right way. Was entertaining every step of the way. His promos in this Jungle Boy Jack Perry feud were some of the most entertaining things on AEW television in a time where AEW was in a bit of a flux. Remember, the insurgency of Ring of Honor on AEW TV was not that fondly received by many fans, including myself. But every time Christian Cage would be on TV, it was like a breath of fresh air. And I loved it. So if this is the end of him in AEW, then hats off to you, sir. If not, give me more Christian Cage. Rebuild Christian's coalition. Let's go. Give this man an All-Atlantic World title run, or an All-Atlantic title run, or whatever it's called. And let's just go, man. I'm here for it. But really good match. Jack Perry, I think, is on his way to be doing a lot of great stuff. It's going to be interesting to see which title he ends up going for. But I'm telling you, if Powerhouse Hobbs ends up winning the TNT title, like, you got your guy here, right there, Jungle Boy Jack Perry. Next match, AEW World Trios Championships on the line. The Elite versus the House of Black. In a shocking twist, the House of Black defeated the Elite by pinning one Kenneth Omega. Sorry, no, they didn't pin Kenny Omega. Well, no. Yeah, almost pinned Kenny Omega. They pinned Matt Jackson. I'm sorry about that. Hyperbole, whatever. I misspoke. It's late. I'm tired. We're going to run through this. Anyway, House of Black defeated the Elite in a big upset. I didn't have them winning this. I didn't think that the Elite's world title run was going to be this short. I thought they were going to, honestly, just hold the titles until All Out next year and then lose it to maybe CMFTR. It doesn't look like that's happening right now, but House of Black won, and it was a shock, but in a very good way, because you were like, oh my God, House of Black, they did something. They accomplished something. And on top of that, you're like, oh my God, thank God, they're going to stick around now. Buddy Matthews maybe isn't going to go off as many people thought he was, which is great. We love that. Great match. I'm not big on star ratings. I know I tweeted out a few today. This was like a really good match, like 4.5, whatever. I don't care. 4.5 stars out of 5. It was a great match. It was electric. The near falls were amazing. This was exactly what I wanted this match to be. Kenny Omega, by the way, for those of you who still doubt this man, for those of you who still doubt Kenny Omega and his excellence, hey, yo, you watching the product? I gotta be. I know, he has a lot of haters, like the Cornette people, blah blah blah. But do you even watch the product? Don't tell me this man is trash and killing the business when he's going out there and putting on clinics in trios matches, putting on clinics in singles matches, putting on clinics in tag team matches, putting on clinics in battle royale. This dude does everything. Everything. He is the best wrestler going right now. In ring, he is the best. And this is coming from a Bryan Danielson fan, a diehard Bryan Danielson fan. Kenny Omega right now is the best wrestler in the world, outside of maybe MJF. We'll get to that, and hopefully they'll get to that feud. But House of Black winning, this opens up a lot more stuff for them to do now. I'm happy the House of Black are going to have hopefully a solidified spot on TV week to week. It's going to allow for them to maybe character build a little bit more, which is something that I've wanted to see them do. It's something I think a lot of fans of theirs have wanted to see them do, but we have not seen that materialize over the past few weeks or few years, basically. So can't wait to see what happens there. Moving on, the triple threat match, 3-way match, whatever. Saraya, Jamie and Ruby Soho. Okay. So this was another really excellent matchup. And here's the thing. This match, like, this was more so, I think, of a like a storyline match. And I'm not saying that in that, oh, the action sucked and it was all about the story. No, 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 no. The action was great. Like, you have three of the best wrestlers of this generation, especially in the women's division of this generation in there. You have Jamie Hayter, who's just on fire like no one else right now. Saraya, who's been doing it literally since she was a fetus. And Ruby Soho, who's been underrated everywhere she goes. And they went out there. They had a great match. Jamie Hayter picked up the victory in like in a roll-up spot that I didn't like see coming, honestly. And this was weird because you had two back-to-back matches there with the Elite losing and Jamie Hayter winning, where it was kind of a surprise, like not necessarily a surprise on the ladder of how it ended, but a surprise of just how quickly it ended. But man, this was so much fun. In the end, we saw the big spot of Toni Storm and Saraya beating down Hayter and Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. Ruby Soho initially aligned herself with the AEW originals, only to turn her back on them and join up with the new blood, the NWO, the new women's order in AEW. I don't know what they're going to call themselves, but she joined the former WWE people. Or the free agents, whatever you want to call them. The free agents is a good name for them. Great stuff. The facial reactions from Ruby Soho, she like played it perfectly. This is why she's one of my favorite wrestlers. Loved it. Ramit in the chat says, happy for Ruby Soho finally they got their old buddies. No Mandy Rose in All Elite Wrestling though. Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, Charles in the chat. What's up, you Charles? Saying, well-deserved win indeed. Cool, they went with House of Black. I agree. Buddy Murphy, man, stole the show. Buddy Murphy. Those kicks are lethal. But, man, Malachi Black. I mean, look, everyone in that match was great. But Malachi Black, he's so good. He's so good. Ramit in the chat says, Ruby Soho tonight's attire reminded me of the Riot Squad. I mean, the interesting thing was, like, she did have green hair. I don't know. Maybe that was a sign of things that were to come. But great match. I can't wait to see what happens next. This is one of my favorite things. I love it. I'm here for it. Moving on. Speaking of things I love, guys, I think this might be my new favorite hardcore match. Before, I mean, like, I always said this, like, one of my favorite matches to go back and watch was the Mick Foley Randy Orton match, 2004 Backlash. I think this just replaced that. Texas Death, AEW Revolution 2023, Jon Moxley versus Hangman Adam Page. 5, 6, 7, 15 stars out of 5. I don't care. This is honestly one of my favorite matches I've ever watched. Like, these two went out there, did some insane, crazy spots. Like, I just showed you this one where Moxley took 2 bricks, sandwich Hangman Adam Page's hand in between them, and just stomped on him. He gave him the curb stomp onto the bricks at one point. We saw barbed wire. Hangman Adam Page wrapped barbed wire around his body and then did a moonsault onto Jon Moxley. And Jon Moxley, these two were bleeding profusely throughout the entire matchup. The gnarliest spot in this match, Moxley had Hangman Page in a head scissors, and he takes out a fork, and it's honestly one of the most realistic / just like it made me squeamish. I don't get squeamish too much, but this made me squeamish. Just like him, just digging. You could see him digging with that fork into Hangman Adam Page's head. Crimson Mask, both of these guys. If you haven't watched the pay-per-view, if you haven't seen this match, do yourself a favor. Go watch one of the best hardcore death match. Like, this was like, people were saying online that this was like CZW back in the day, or this was just like this is just like one of the best wrestling match. Yes, that and then some. This was absolute like perfection. I loved it. I think for me, this was the match of the night. Like, this was my favorite match. You could argue match of the night on other things as well, which we'll get to. Oh my God, though. This was just, I just remember in the moment, I was just like, this is great. Like, I don't need anything else out of my pro wrestling other than this. And it was amazing. Moving on. This spot. Okay. So Moxley at one point decided it would be a good idea to wrap himself with a chain. With this big chain. He just wrapped himself with a big chain and just hurled himself at Hangman Adam Page. Hangman Adam Page reversed it. He hit him with the buckshot. And then the Hangman did what the Hangman does. When the Hangman catches you, you hang. And that's exactly what he did to Moxley, making him tap out while he was hanging him over the ropes. By God. For those people, for those of you, by the way, who say Hangman Adam Page is underrated or overrated, that the dude, like, doesn't really have good matches, what more does he need to do to prove it to you? Like, the dude, like, Kenny Omega, like, great match. John Moxley, 1, 2, 3, 4, great matches. Bryan Daniel, like, Adam Cole, baby. Like, this dude just has great matches with everyone except for CM Punk. I mean, it's just, he's great. Like, I don't know what else to say. And if you don't believe me, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. 100%. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I just happen to profusely disagree if your opinion is that Hangman Adam Page doesn't have good matches. Like, that's just, I'm sorry. You're just wrong. So, God, this was such a great match. I mean, I'm going to go back and watch it. Like, I mean, not tonight because, you know, I work tomorrow, but eventually I'm going to go back and watch it because it was just that great of a match. I mean, even if blood and guts isn't your thing, I highly recommend this match because it is good storytelling. It's like these two just did everything in their power to beat the ever-living crap out of each other. And that's what we were promised going into the match. That's what we got when we got to the match. Pro wrestling at its finest, at its simplest. Moving on. By the way, guys, feel free to ask questions about this match, any of the matches, whatever. The order is mostly for me, so I keep talking. But if you guys have questions, put them in the chat. Be sure, if you haven't already done so, to hit that like button, subscribe for more reviews and videos on all things professional wrestling, WWE, AEW, all that jazz. And if you want to guarantee your question or statement gets read out on the air, be sure to leave a super chat. Super chats are a great way to support the channel and have your voice heard. And now, the AEW TNT Championship match. Honestly, on a card of excellent matches, this was the weakest. Spoiler alert, Wardlow won. But that being said, it was still a good match. Was it like the pee break match? Sure. For a lot of people. I saw a lot of people like get up. But they told a story. It was effective. Wardlow got the victory over Joe, and they had that ending spot where Wardlow was looking up at his opponent this Wednesday night on Dynamite at Powerhouse Will Hobbs, who I think should win. I think Powerhouse Hobbs should win on Dynamite. And man, I'm just telling you, it's like that's gonna be a match. I think I should main event Dynamite. It's just great. Oh my God, what a great pay-per-view this was. We got your Charles in the chat saying, even with CM Punk, he was great. Not Punk, however, which degraded their match. Oh yeah, Punk's buck tot lariats. I don't even know what to call them. Moving on, AEW World Tag Team Championships were on the line. Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal taking on the Acclaimed, taking on Orange Cassidy and Danhausen, taking on the AEW Tag Team Champions, the Guns. All right, so Guns picked up the victory. Very fun match. Danhausen was like, this was the Danhausen Fun Fest match. Like, I mean, these teams went crazy, beat the ever living crap out of each other. Jeff Jarrett is like 60 years old, and he just look, ageless wonder. Best punches, I think, of all time. Like, this is just like the dude is elite. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason. Whether or not you liked his promos, whether or not you liked his booking in TNA, all that stuff to the side, the dude definitely knows how to put on a clinic as far as matches goes, and definitely knows how to wrestle. So, like, I mean, it's just the fact that he's doing it this age at that high of a level is a testament to him. That being said, Guns picked up the victory, pinning poor Danhausen. Danhausen at one point did a spot with Satnam Singh. I really want to see those two. I don't care. Satnam Singh versus Danhausen should main event like Dynamite every week. I don't care. That's my kind of television right there. Guns picked up the victory, though. They cut a promo afterwards in an interview with Renee Paquette saying that they are the best tag team in the world, and they've beaten everybody. And then we hear... FTR's music. They have a brawl. FTR wins that brawl. They hold up the AEW Tag Team Championships. It's very clear now FTR are back in AEW, and they are going after the AEW Tag Team titles. They got to win so we can get that Elite versus or the Young Bucks versus FTR again. They got to win. To steal a quote from the Dapper Yapper, Justin Roberts. And now, for the AEW World Championship 60-minute Iron Man match, MJF, Bryan Danielson. So, yeah, I mean, critically, this was like. Even though the Texas Death Match was my favorite match from the show, all-time classic. Like, I don't even know what to say about it. I mean, I will obviously talk about it, but like, this match went over 60 minutes. There's great spots in this match. We saw MJF at one point when he was down by a fall. Bryan Danielson picked up the first fall, and then MJF immediately hit him with a low blow, and then was able to get 2 pinfalls in a row on Bryan. Because the interesting thing about how AEW did this was, usually in WWE Iron Man matches, they have like not a rest period, but like they give like a second before the you're eligible to take another fall. Like, they wait for both competitors to get up. AEW said, no. Immediately after the fall, everything's we're still going. The match does not stop. So that was cool to see. MJF, down after being down 1, hit Bryan with a low blow, then pinned him, and then immediately went in for another pinfall, pinned him again, was able to tie it at 2-2, and so instead of being down by 1, it was back to even. Bryan Danielson then eventually made Maxwell Jacob Friedman tap out. This was great. This was so great. Oh my God. They get so it was tied 3-3. Bryan Danielson had MJF as the clock. By the way, I'm so sorry. I'm getting way ahead of myself. Go back to that real quick. MJF. Both these guys were bleeding. MJF gushered himself. Like, this was like Eddie Guerrero, Great American Bash 2004. Just, he like saucing, gushing blood out of his head. I was like, oh, that's gnarly. This was like, he was great. He pouring water all over himself throughout the entire match. I mean, he's a pro. Within the first 10 minutes of this match, I think, by the way, they had this sequence where Bryan and MJF were going through and like having a great technical go around. Why do people still have this narrative that MJF sucks as a wrestler? He does not. He's like actually one of the best wrestlers in the world. Technically, He's one of the best technical wrestlers in the world. And he proved it tonight. He had one of the best matches in the AEW history. In my opinion, the best main event match in the company, pay-per-view main event match in the company's history. And that's saying a lot because they have put on some great matches to close out these great pay-per-views they've had. This was the best. MJF, as the clock hit 0, tapped out, but it didn't count. They were tied 3-3. You thought it was over. Justin Roberts announces that, oh, well, MJF retains his title because we ended in a tie. He gets his championship belt. He's getting oxygen, by the way. And then Tony Schiavone makes his way down. He heard something in his ear from Tony Khan, apparently, and he was told that the match will continue sudden death. So after 60 minutes of wrestling, these guys go out there and wrestle for another 15 minutes. Have some elite exchanges, some all-elite exchanges. And the match ends with, of course, with MJF, the sneaky, conniving little brat that he is, sneaking out to the outside of the ring while the referee was distracted, taking the oxygen tank that was helping him when we thought the match was over, hitting Bryan in the head with it, and then hiding it immediately, and then going in and putting Bryan Danielson in the yes lock, in the label lock, whatever you call it. He put him in the label lock, and Bryan Danielson tapped out to MJF. 15 stars out of 5. Like, this was just amazing. Freaking killer match. Yeah, Charles in the chat says, was it a shot at the tweet of WWE legends dissing that Yuta's blood face picture homage was of Stone Cold when MJF, the bloody face, tried to reach the cam? I don't even think it was that. I mean, that's just like that's a great shot in any like wrestling company, you know, like that's just a shot. It would be Stone Cold. Stone Cold wasn't even reaching for the camera when he did it. Stone Cold was like reaching for the ropes, first of all. And the infamous shot of Stone Cold, he wasn't even like looking at the camera. He was looking upwards in pain. Ramit in the chat says that was Maxwell Jacob Friedman. I think that this was last pay-per-view match for Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. We'll get to that in a second. Man, I don't know what I mean, again, this is me immediately after this pay-per-view, off the cuff by myself. Like, this is just if for all of the people who said that Maxwell Jacob Friedman still had something to prove, after this match, he has nothing to prove. And it was the right thing to do. They put him over as clearly as they could in the best way they could, because they made him look like a smarmy heel, but at the same time, they put him over strong because he did one thing that not many people have ever been able to say that they have done in a match. He made Bryan Danielson tap out. That's a big freaking deal. And this isn't Bryan Danielson passing out. This isn't Bryan Danielson getting counted out. None of that. No, he made him give up, submit, tap out. And that is something that MJF will never let anyone forget for the rest of his life. He is never going to let people forget that. And man, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. Oh my God. Like, he's going to cut these amazing promos. I still think Ricky Starks should be the guy to beat him. But there we go. AEW Revolution. Overall, this was 9.5 out of 10 as far as the pay-per-view goes. Like, this was near perfect pay-per-view. I thought that the pacing was a lot better than past pay-per-views. Granted, this was like one of the first pay-per-views in a while that I wasn't at live. And one of the things that still bothers me about AEW TV is the commentary. I cannot stand Taz, Tony Schiavone, and Excalibur as a team. I love Excalibur, don't get me wrong, but Tony Schiavone, especially, and Taz with his lame-ass jokes, in my opinion, they drag it down. I would much rather see JR, or much rather hear JR on commentary. And again, I know JR has his own problems as far as, being slower than he has been in the past and all that stuff, and maybe mispronouncing stuff and all that. But he's still better, and he gives those matches time to breathe, which with Taz on commentary, I just feel like half of everything that's going on is a joke. Like, he's just cutting lame jokes, and it takes away from the matches. So, and I think JR honestly gives it a little more seriousness, a little more gravitas, just because of the credibility he's had over the years. That's just me. Outside of that, great pay-per-view. 2 5-star matches on one card. I said going into this, and people were mad about it. Oh, I'm more hyped about this. I said that I'm more hyped about this match or this card and this pay-per-view than I was WrestleMania. I feel so affirmed about it. Like that, this, it's going to be hard for WrestleMania to be better than this pay-per-view. Either night, both nights combined, it's going to be hard. Yeah, this was fan-freaking-tastic, people. Just absolute, I loved it. This is exactly what I want for my pro wrestling. Like, if you ask me, book a pro wrestling, this is it. And I'm happy with it. I loved it. And it honestly, there is not much more I could have asked for other than just better commentary. But next time, I'll probably just go to the pay-per-view and bypass that entirely. Let's get to some of these questions. So, Ramit, you brought up the idea of this being Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks' last match. I don't think so. I don't think so for multiple reasons. Number one, I don't think either Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks have made a decision as far as where they're going to go. Number two, and more importantly, I'm pretty sure AEW is going to add time on Kenny's contract. And because I know people are like, oh, well, it's supposed to expire soon or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you forget, he was gone for 8 months. 8 months. And AEW has the option to add time to his contract because of that injury. And I think they'd be stupid not to. You have Kenny Omega. Keep him around. And Omega's talked about how he wants to stick around and foster growth in the women's division, foster growth for Joshi Wrestling in AEW and in America in general. So I think we're still a ways off from that decision happening. I also think that the next step in the tag team division is going to be the Young Bucks versus FTR. That match is just destined to happen again. And I think it should happen soon. And this opens up Kenny Omega to do something in the singles division, which, again, we have not seen Kenny Omega wrestle in a singles matchup since, in AEW, I should say. We haven't seen him wrestle in a singles matchup in AEW since Full Gear 2021. That's over a year. It's almost a year and a half now. It's going to happen. And when it does, it's going to be electric. And I hope it's like Kenny versus Malachi Black. I hope it's Kenny versus Orange Cassidy. I hope it's Kenny versus Powerhouse Hobbs or Wardlow, whoever is holding that TNT belt. Hell, give me Kenny versus MJF. Have MJF actually do that. That should be the thing. MJF should go out and beat everybody. I think beat everybody and then come back to that Ricky Starks thing. That might be how you do it. I don't know. But the other thing that I do want to talk about is what this pay-per-view meant for AEW. Because I think outside of All Out, this was the best pay-per-view AEW's had. And I'm talking about Double or Nothing 2019. I'm including AEW Revolution 2020, which one of the most acclaimed pay-per-views of all time. But it really does feel like AEW is back. And what I mean by that is I think they're kind of back to being and back to that identity they had when they were at their peak in 2021, which is just the best wrestling show in the world. And I think this pay-per-view makes that undeniable in my opinion, because they're coming off of some of the worst months they've had or the worst calendar year they had in company history. Like, not just as far as the television product took a nosedive because of a lot of it was because of the ROH stuff and trying to integrate that with TV and it just not working. But on top of that, you had all the backstage stuff. Sammy Guevara and Andrade El Idolo, Sammy Guevara and Eddie Kingston, the whole Elite versus CM Punk thing. Like, all that stuff was weighing so heavily on this company. And it just felt like they couldn't get back to what they did best, which was just give badass wrestling, tell badass storylines, and just be the best wrestling company on the planet. Not the biggest, but the best. And I think they got back to that tonight because I saw storytelling tonight. I saw them deliver great match after great match after great match. Two of the best matches in AEW history. Possibly the best Iron Man match of all time. And I know that might be recency bias, but it was great. They made a guy in MJF who had already been made in a sense, but they somehow managed to find a way to make him even more by getting that submission win over Bryan. They were able to make another trios team, make those trios belts matter even more because now and make House of Black matter more. You had a return, like it just feels like the energy. The energy, the momentum is somehow just swinging back in the direction of positivity for AEW after it being so bad for so long and so negative for so long. I just feel like the pendulum's kind of shifted back to where it was. And I'm not saying that they're going to be doing the same numbers, but I'm talking about as a product, as a TV product, as just the general vibe, I think, is just back to being what it was. And look, and I know a lot of people, some people might not want to hear it, some people might. CM Punk is coming up to about the time where you would think he's healthy from that torn tricep. If they find a way to make it work with the locker room and everything else, because Kenny Omega said, like, hey man, like, bygones, like, got to move past it. If they find a way to bring him back and add that fuel and it just like they could put on some of the best TV a pro wrestling company has had in years. The way that this is all just shaping out. I mean, like, again, an all-time pay-per-view at a time where AEW really needed it. And where a lot of doubters were dancing on the grave of AEW, right? Like, this just felt different. This felt great. I loved it. Yeah, Charles in the chat says, do you think Daniel Bryan will bounce back after the loss? Eventually, yeah. Eventually, he has to. But speaking of bouncing back, I got to bounce, guys. We'll talk about AEW Revolution on Wrestling with Omer. We'll talk about it, I'm sure. Definitely we'll talk about it Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern here on youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. We'll talk about it on OT Graps with Trevor, and any news that comes out of it throughout the week, we will keep you guys tied to that. So, again, all-time pay-per-view. If you guys like this stream, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let me know what you guys thought about it in the comments section. And until next time, I'm Umar Q. Be happy, be healthy, and always keep it real.